I am so excited today to have a social media friend. Her name is Jessica Michelle Singleton to share her story on the Arthritis Life podcast. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here and so excited to get to chat with you in real life instead of
Oh
just
my
in the
gosh.
comments.
It's so surreal. I mean, at first, I'm going to just give away the lead here or whatever. That, I first saw you on just a reel popped up, and I was like, of a comedian, you talking about rheumatoid arthritis. I was like, oh my gosh, there's someone out there, connecting on humor, and I think that's just it's so important to have that representation. But that's anyway. First of all, I'll just let you introduce yourself. Where do you live, and what is your relationship to arthritis?
Well, I live in LA now, where I am a stand-up comedian, excuse me. And I have arthritis. I was diagnosed, gosh, over 10 years ago, maybe 12 years ago now. And so yeah, I had a joke I did on a Don't Tell comedy set that kind of blew up, and I got a lot of followers and messages from other people with rheumatoid arthritis. I started getting more women with arthritis coming to my shows, and it was cool getting to talk to people who have had similar experiences because it does feel odd talking about it sometimes with people who don't.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's such a barrier to understanding it because if they hear the words rheumatoid arthritis, they might, or just arthritis, they might think of like osteoarthritis or who's this young, like, why is this young person talking about arthritis? Like,
Yeah, that's why I say that too, that it's like everyone's like, oh yeah, my grandma's back hurts when it rains. But it's
so,
having to explain it is like, no, it's a different kind, but okay.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah. Uh, so, I've gone through the general roller coaster. I think I like to I've been really lucky with mine. It's been slow progressing, and then as of late, which I guess maybe I'm like jumping the gun, but
No, it's
it
okay.
I got blood work and stuff done a couple months ago, and mine right now is inactive. So that's been really cool. I
Wow.
feel very lucky.
Yeah, no, that's the dream, right? Is to get everyone into either remission or low disease activity. And yeah, that so that's the ending. Let's start at the beginning because yeah, how did you get there? And first of all, how did you get your diagnosis? Because this is always like a saga or often a saga.
Well, what was so funny about my diagnosis is I started having joint pain in high school, and I lived in Alaska. That's where I went to high school, Anchorage, Alaska. And
Oh.
it was specifically in the winter, which it almost seems stupid to say specifically because the winter's so long. But I also played a ton of sports, and I have a mom who I love dearly, but we don't always connect on things. And I don't know if this is generational or if it's uh my mom specifically, or honestly, it's a good, I think, poverty we can't afford to always go to the doctor tactic is that I'm also very neurotic, but anytime I was like, something's wrong, my mom would just be like, you're a hypochondriac, you're fine. So I told her about my joints hurting, and she's like, you play sports, you're fine. So I spent years being like, I play sports, and I guess I hurt. And then
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't until I was like 25 years old, I went to a walk-in clinic because I had terrible insurance. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I and as I say this, I'm like, maybe I'm like a little bit of a hypochondriac, but I'd had a lymph node in my armpit that was swollen for a couple days, and it just
Oh,
hurt.
yeah, yeah.
And that ended up being, I just had a cold that was being processed. But while I was in there, I offhandedly was like, also, sometimes my joints hurt.
Yeah, yeah.
And the doctor in there, like, bless this person, was like, what do you mean? Like, how bad? Where? And I was kind of like, kind of all over, really, like in my wrists and elbows a lot. And I said, I don't know if they hurt any more than any other person my age. And the doctor looked at my chart and was like, you're 25. And I was like, yeah. And they're like, people your age don't have joint pain. And honest to God, until that point, I thought everyone was kind of just walking around in pain and sucking it up.
No, that's all you knew. That's
Yeah.
all you know. Yeah.
That I was like, is this normal? And so they were like, we'll do, some blood tests. And I get the blood test back, and all of my like numbers were through the roof. So they're like, you need to see a rheumatologist right away. And that's kind of how the ball started rolling. And I went from there to rheumatologist, got a diagnosis, immediately wanted a second opinion because it's like, oh, clarity, but also denial. Are we sure?
Completely. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and I got my diagnosis and they were like, okay, so we're gonna put you on methotrexate. And I was like, breaks.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know anything. I'd done no research. And I was like, methotrexate, that's pretty intense, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not even really taking ibuprofen for this. I've just kind of been buckling down. Like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and at that point, I went back and I rearranged my budget and was like, how can I penny pinch elsewhere and get myself on slightly better insurance? Because I was like, let me at least, seems like this is going to be an ongoing thing. So let me try to mitigate whatever little bit of cost I can by getting ahead of that. Which are we ever? Who knows?
No, but and that's, I mean, it's just think I want to quickly just acknowledge that a lot of times when people think, what's it like to be a young person? So I was diagnosed at 21, with arthritis or with inflammatory autoimmune arthritis. They'll think about the physical symptoms, but a lot of the burden of the disease or the stress around the disease is not just in the symptoms. It's what you're talking about. How am I going to afford these medications? How do I, in my job in the United States, our jobs are tied to the insurance. So I remember I was working for a nonprofit that didn't have that good of insurance. And so but I was working there. I started working there part-time and then worked at a government job 20 hours a week so I could have insurance. Like this is like, what were you doing
Yes.
professionally? Were you in the
Oh,
entertainment industry or what were you doing?
I had just, I think, less than a year before left my full-time job, which was at a nonprofit. So the
Mhm.
insurance was barely better than what I was on.
Yeah.
But it's like time to take the leap. And then I was like, I've left and the net is made of barbed wire. What's happening? uh,
Yeah.
but I somehow made that work and ended up going. I just was, the rheumatologist I saw initially might have been fine. It was just sort of, let me get someone I'm more comfortable with and that I can like talk to. And
Hmm.
and I ended up finding a woman who I was glad, because I don't know, I think it's easier to talk to women. Women understand women's bodies more, and you read a lot about how we get dismissed a lot.
Well, I was gonna say you were, it sounds like, raised to call yourself a hypochondriac, and that's a really, to me, I feel like that should be a banned word, like because I just think that like we shouldn't be shamed or accused of having a disorder for just like wanting to be, like I get that there is such a thing as like an OCD, like health anxiety that needs to be treated, right? But then there's
Yes.
like, in a way, I mean, maybe you called yourself a hypochondriac, but you actually could have been that whole time. Like your body is out of whack. Like,
Yeah, it's like almost like I was gaslighting myself and being like,
yes, yes.
I'm probably overreacting. And the whole time it's like, oh, there was something really wrong. And I was going, you're being a baby. And by the way,
Hmm.
it does it's a disservice. And I'm saying this from experience, to go into the doctor and go, sometimes a little bit of a hypochondriac, because they immediately go, okay, so whatever you say is a lie. Like,
Yeah.
not a lie,
Yeah.
but it's like she's probably overreacting. And it's like you have to be very clear and very specific,
Hmm.
because I don't know. I don't know how much it's like the medical industry in America is terrible in so many ways. And I know there's places where I'm sure it's so worse, but so much worse, excuse me. But the way they'll just overbook appointments where it's like, yeah, they
Yeah.
want to just get you in and out and stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, I think it's complex. I think my experience for rheumatology, I always feel defensive of rheumatologists because I do feel like, I mean, there are definitely some bad ones out there, but like the majority of rheumatologists actually really want to spend more time with their patients. And a lot of times it's like are constrained by some of the like systemic things like pressures or whatnot.
Oh,
But
absolutely.
yeah, but point being, I'm glad like finding a good fit, like lesson from this, like many different lessons already. One is don't call yourself a hypochondriac, like trust your body, unless you
Yes.
clinically like there is I think the incidence of hypochondria and or health anxiety that's like at a clinical like needs a therapist level is so much lower than it actually
Yes.
seems. So it's like trust yourself. And then second, if you don't like if your first rheumatologist isn't a good fit, you can find another one. So
Yes. And I did find one who I absolutely love. And I was, because I had that mindset, because I did kind of have a mindset of like, oh, doctors,
mhm.
it's been an uphill battle for me with not only my rheumatoid arthritis, but also like I have ADHD to get out of the mindset of everyone's just trying to push pills and like
Oh, yeah, yeah.
that in itself is my own journey that I had to work with. But I was I agree with you. I was surprised with how much time she took, and she, it was the last guy at the time, the first guy I saw wasn't, she was literally like feeling my joints and like, let's
Mhm.
get some scans and like take some, imaging, and did another round of blood work. And I was like, oh, this person's actually like looking at everything. It was very just
Mhm.
comforting.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah.
So did you eventually go on medications as
I
part of your
did for
treatment
a
plan? Yeah.
while.
Yeah.
My journey is maybe like less popular than some people would like, but because I eventually just, I'll just tell you.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is,
I
this podcast is really a forum for sharing your real lived experience. And then if I feel like ethically obligated to point out, like I have done this in the numerous past episodes, like, oh, like, like we like to say, like, don't, you do tell your doctor if you've gone off a medication or something, like I'll point out anything, but feel free to share
Yes.
exactly what happened because real life is messy.
Perfect. Okay, great.
Yeah.
And all that to say, like, obviously none of what I'm saying is medical advice,
Medical
it's just
advice.
my
No.
story, but I originally got put on Plaquenil,
Mm-hmm.
which
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if everyone remembers the fun moment. I was already off of it by the time they did this in quarantine, but when Donald Trump was like, "Oh, this will cure COVID," and I just immediately my heart was like, "Oh no,
Yeah.
everyone who needs it's not going to be able to get it. Oh God." Um,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
and I can't even imagine. I went on it in 2017. I was 2017 to 2018 I was taking it, and I felt fine for a long time. And then I had a minor surgery on my wrist because
Mm-hmm.
I had like a ganglion cyst. It was not
Mm-hmm.
even
Mm-hmm.
I it it was just a hideous lump, and they were like, we could remove it surgically. By the way, came back twice, and then I had to aspirate it. It never came back. So they tell you the
Oh.
surgery works better, but in my case, that wasn't. That's
Hmm.
such a side tangent.
No, no,
But
no. It's okay. Someone listening might be in the same position you are.
just hit it with the book. I'm kidding. Don't
Yeah,
do
no.
anything I say.
Don't.
So when you have a surgery, they make you go off of anything that's like a blood thinner, and I had to
Yes.
stop taking my Plaquenil for 10 days ahead of the surgery. Had the surgery, and then because I'm a workaholic that maybe doesn't always make the best decisions in terms of rest, immediately went on tour doing stand up. And
Wow.
I was on the road because I was both on tour and then in between going to New York City and like staying there and doing spots. I was out of town for maybe like a month, and I had forgotten my medication.
Oh,
And
right. Yeah.
so I just freeballed it. I was like, all right, well, I've been not on medication before, so I'll be okay. I'll start when I go back to town. And then I came back, got my prescription refilled, started taking it, and I immediately had like severe joint pain that I hadn't been having. And
Interesting.
I went to my doctor and I was like, "Hey, I got back on my meds and I didn't even realize that I hadn't been really having joint pain lately. But then
Mm-hmm.
as soon as I started taking them, the joint pain came back." And she's like, I don't know.
It's a
Um,
mystery.
Yeah. And she was like, well, if you want, we could try something else. And then, and this is why I go, don't listen to me. But I was like, I think I'm just gonna, well, I was like, I think I'm just gonna stop for a while. And I had been reading more about diet and how that can really help with a lot of the
Mhm,
inflammation. So I was like,
mhm.
I think I've been eating more healthy. I want to try that. And I will qualify this with saying I am the kind of person who will try to do anything before I take medication. And there's a lot of reasons for that. And more of it stems from I have like my own family history of seeing people struggle with
Mhm.
mental health medications.
Oh, yeah.
And so that kind of just colored and like gave me a little bit of like an extra layer of skepticism
Mhm,
around stuff.
mhm.
But then
Are you
I
seronegative, by the way, or seropositive?
I negative.
Okay, because
Negative.
yeah, the likelihood, just putting a little data point here, the likelihood of sustaining an unmedicated remission is extremely low for people who are seropositive, but it is higher for those who are seronegative. So that doesn't surprise me that you have been able to um be, but again, there's exceptions to every rule. And all they say all the time, if you talk to rheumatologists, go to the conferences, rheumatology, there are evidence-based guidelines, and then there's the gray area of real life, the art and the stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
So
and um that's so interesting because I am positive I must have read that at some point and forgot that. And not me like on the side trying to double check my blood work and be
no,
like, right,
I'm
I
doing the
am,
same
aren't I?
thing too. Yeah.
Because I'm like, I don't remember anymore. But
Yeah.
um yeah, and what surprised me is I brought up, so anyone who's read about like diet and done like deep dives that has rheumatoid arthritis probably has come across different things about diet. I had started reading about this kind of elimination diet called the autoimmune protocol, and I was like,
Mhm.
okay. But my doctor didn't know anything about it. She'd never heard of it. And I was like, you've never heard anything about, you've never even heard about that? And she's like, no. And I'm like, all right.
Yeah. That's
But she's
not,
like, by all means.
they say most doctors get like one 30-minute lecture on nutrition. And a lot of them do say recommend going, if you're going to change your diet massively, to work with like a registered dietitian that has some
Mhm.
autoimmune experience. And I will put in the show notes just before we talk about diet specifically that in 2022, the American College of Rheumatology, for the first time ever, put out an evidence-based guideline for integrative treatments for RA. Integrative in this, in their definition, just means non-pharmaceutical. So and they
I
did
love
say,
that.
yeah, they recommended or they said the evidence was strongest for a Mediterranean whole foods plant focused, not vegan or vegetarian.
Not based, but
But
just like
yeah,
heavy.
just having like whole food, plant-based Mediterranean. And overall, when they looked at the evidence, they were against any formally defined diet other than Mediterranean. But that said, that's the guideline at the population level when we're talking about where's going to be your starting point with a new patient. But when you're a practitioner, whether you're a registered dietitian or like I am an occupational therapist, what evidence-based practice is not just what do the scientific studies say? It is a combination of that and what is the self-evidence of the patient you're talking to. Like if you tell me that you did XYZ diet and that's not the one that's recommended typically, but it's not harmful. It's just not usually one that they start with. I'm not going to be like, oh, sorry, you have to go back and like start. There's other that's the evidence that you need in your case would be it's working for you. Like,
Yeah.
like so. Anyway, it's I'm sorry, rabbit hole alert.
No, but
Like,
that, I mean, that's just so true. And I have to tell you, as someone who loves food, and prior to us even coming on the air was telling you how I ate a hot dog last night and
yeah.
it has derailed my life. Um, I was honestly, because it was basically I started eating kind of whole foods, like just not
Mhm.
stuff from boxes, vegetables, meat,
Mhm.
and fruit. It was kind of is what I eat when every once in a while I'll get a little wild here and there, have some crackers, but
Sorry.
but that's what I started doing. And honestly, I love food so much, specifically junk food. I was devastated that it worked. Like I
Yeah,
was like,
yeah, yeah.
I didn't, because it was one of those things where I did the full kind of a full elimination for a month, and
Okay.
then this is classic me. Instead of easing my way into trying, like, okay, let's add one thing back in and see how I react, I just started munching on extra stuff. And it was another scenario where I didn't realize how little I'd been experiencing joint pain.
Yeah.
And then as soon as I started eating like sugar and adding back in a lot more gluten, it was like night and day. I was like, oh, the pain is back, like
Mm-hmm.
instantly, heavily. Uh, and so that was just an interesting, I don't know, piece of information for me, I guess. And
I have the same thing. It's like, how do you notice an absence? Like if something I've been doing is working, then I have the absence of pain. And it's absence of pain or absence of fatigue is really noticeable if you've just had really severe thing. You know, if you
yes,
just had severe pain and then you did an action and that action reduced your pain, so it's very noticeable. But if you're used to living with this chronic kind of like background noise or maybe sometimes louder noise of pain, and then like
it kind
it
of just chips
yeah,
away. Yeah.
it's
We,
hard.
yeah, you like take for granted
Yes.
being pain free or in minimal pain when it kind of is, yeah, when it's not a dramatic drop off immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And like I'll say, like I was wearing compression gloves nonstop. I was
Mm-hmm.
like doing all like so many extra things and on top of my medication and then like trying to be minimal about ibuprofen, but having days where I'd be like, all right, I just a little bit and
Mm-hmm.
topical creams and whatever, you name it. Up until that point. And then I don't know. I want to say it's been like because COVID, we were really locked down in LA for a while. And of course, like I think a lot of people with anything extra were on top of the normal stress, you're having stress because you're, if you're immunocompromised or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that put this other like
Yeah, that
fear in my head of like, I don't want, I thank God I'm not on the medication because I like just crazy. I don't know. I don't want to say we all went crazy. Everyone in my house went crazy.
yeah.
But
It was
I,
stressful. Yeah, it was stressful. Not There's a lot of unknowns. There was unknown of, I will
for
say for the record,
sure.
yeah, having your immune system, if your disease is active, meaning you're having active joint pain, all your typical symptoms like fatigue, that is not good for your immune system either, which is something a lot of people forget, right?
Yeah,
They're
because
like, well, the
it's already an
medications,
overdrive,
yeah. So
probably.
your immune
Yeah.
system, your immunosuppressant therapies like drugs, they suppress your immune system, but your immune system's already doing something wrong. So you're like, okay, well, it's doing something wrong. It's distracting itself from the ability to fight outside infections because it's so active attacking your joints that you actually need to
Yes.
suppress that part that's attacking the joints. Um, but again, I mean, it's, what you're talking about really is like the real patient, like lived experience and like the like cost benefit analysis that take place in the ground level of your actual life, not just like, I'm going to look at a clinical research paper, and
Yeah. And then it's like, I'm stressed about, am I doing the right thing? And then the
yeah,
stress is causing flare-ups.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah,
then,
yeah, 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 yeah. Oh.
and all my like healthy lifestyle habits went out the window
Oh,
within maybe
yeah.
like a month and a half of lockdown. It was just like,
Mhm.
I'm eating as a coping mechanism. I'm
Yeah.
moving significantly less, although at least eventually I did start going on like outdoor walks and stuff. And like, just I was living with the person I was dating at the time. We hunkered down and he drank a lot, to be honest. And
Mm.
I wasn't sober, but I wasn't a big drinker, but there was nothing going on. So I just slowly started drinking a little more and all of that and eating, whatever was kind of definitely keeping me in a pain cycle. But I would say, once when we finally started like I don't want to say coming out of it because I know we are not out of COVID, but when
Mhm.
life started coming back to life again,
Mhm.
and I changed my habits, changed my whole life changed. I mean, I went through a breakup and like focused on me, but got
Mhm.
back to eating healthy and moving. I saw a notable decrease, and that's been the last like 2 years of just trying to stay on top of that. And as I mentioned earlier, just in the last couple months, I I went to the doctor and I was like, well, let's, just see where we're at. Um, and she's like, it's inactive, but if you start having issues, like just, stay connected with us. But
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty rare. I mean, I will say also statistically, and I can put a citation in the show notes, but that it's more likely in general, but it can happen. Obviously, there's always an exception to every rule in rheumatology, but juvenile idiopathic arthritis is much more likely to go into spontaneous, like unmedicated remission, just long term than
ooh,
adults. So I'm wondering if maybe you had
maybe
like,
I had it.
because it
Yeah,
is
that's
not normal to have that like joint. Like I was really active as a youth and I was diagnosed with adult RA at 21, but I really only had the symptoms for like a couple years. So
I didn't know that, and that makes
sorry, I
that
cannot speculate on your medical history. Actually, I should
no,
not do
but
that.
no, but honestly, you saying that is like just it's so interesting, and it's a little like light bulb above the head of like I don't know if there would ever even be any way to know that, but it would make so much sense because when I tell you I was like 15 and I used to wake up in the morning and my arms, my elbows, and my wrists and fingers would be in so much pain.
Oh
The
yeah,
thing, what was interesting is that, and maybe I remember it wrong, but like I never remember them looking swollen. It was just the pain on like, but I would
Mhm.
run them under scalding hot water. And I just thought like, this is what people do in Alaska.
Well, yeah, I think having being in Alaska is like a compounding variable. But I think the other thing, this is maybe me thinking like an occupational therapist, the joints on the finger are so small and it's a subtle, especially when you're a child, even more so. It's a
Yeah.
really subtle difference, like to note, because I've even tried it in my own, like it's hard to be objective about yourself, but I can like look at my knuckles and like, yeah, when they are swollen, it is a tiny, like the untrained eye would not practically be able to see it unless your joint like
Yes.
blew up and was like extreme, but a lot of times for me, at least in the finger joints, it's like they're small to begin with. So a small, do you know what I'm saying? I'm not saying the word
No,
small.
I totally know what you're saying. Because also only recently I realized, because I think my swelling has gotten like even lower in the last maybe couple months because I've just been really leaning into trying to like, all right, it's working. Let's keep for
Yeah,
the
yeah.
first time ever instead of going, it's working. I can stop now.
Yeah.
I did it, which is what I love to do. I
Oh,
achieved it.
so we have all been there. Most, and I don't know, maybe we're normal and everyone else is not normal. No, I've certainly
Yeah.
been there. I've certainly been there. Yeah.
Well, my fingers, excuse me, started looking even more slender. And I had the thought, like maybe a week or two ago, where I was like, have I just thought I had fat fingers this whole time and they've been like a little swollen and I
No,
didn't put that
that
together?
is so. Do you ever have jaw pain? Just wondering.
Yes,
Okay.
occasionally I do.
Okay. Because that is also the one of the things that kind of differentiates. I mean, anyone with rheumatoid arthritis, adult rheumatoid arthritis, can definitely have jaw pain. I have personally. I mean, I'm on 21 years with it now too. So since the longer you
Ooh.
have it, the more likely you have like random
Oh my God,
stuff.
you look amazing, by the
Oh,
way.
thank you. Thank you. Sunscreen. No, but the if you have juvenile idiopathic arthritis, which is a bunch of different subtypes, but it's more likely to affect your jaw, especially in your younger years. It's something about it changes how like your jaw bone grows.
That I resonate with that. I've gone through little window periods of time where it's been like really bad.
And again, like I honestly, I'm gonna have like a disclaimer, like that I'm taking
No, but
what you're
it's
saying and thinking about like I'm not saying that like you actually had like I have no way of knowing, even if I was a doctor, I'm not a doctor. So just well, but we can all like a lot of times put the dots together from things that happened earlier in our lives and
yes,
connect the dots. It
which
just
I
makes
think is
sense.
helpful to like so much is just I feel like so much of the journey for me has just been like getting clarity and going, oh,
Yeah.
that's what that is. Like at least having something to call it is instead of just going, my bones or something hurts inside my
Yeah.
skin.
Oh, that's funny you say that because when I was being accused of being hypochondriac, I'm sorry, I'm going to get back to your story in a second, but it just I
That's
have to say
fine.
this ADHD. I can't stop myself. I told my doctor, I feel like there's something wrong in my blood. And I didn't conceptualize that as real pain. My joint pain wasn't that bad initially. I'm just saying my personal experience. I thought I
Wow.
had a sprained finger that somehow had spread to like the other knuckle. I was like, this is weird little sprain that just like spread. Oh well. Like anyway. And
Oh gosh.
I was like, there's something wrong in my blood. And like now I know that that's kind of like that feeling of the systemic, inflammation. Sorry, my dog's
Yes.
hi.
Yeah, where it's so hard to describe it, where you're just like, I don't
Yeah.
know, it's like it's in a point, but it feels like it's radiating almost. Like
Yes. That's so well. And yeah, sorry.
I
I was gonna say, or ask you. So right before we started recording, you mentioned let's circle back to the hot dog. I want to talk about your hot dog. No, because of
let's go
this,
back.
because you had said that last night like, you normally avoid hot dogs and like highly processed food, right?
Yeah.
Because it has historically triggered you and triggered your symptoms. And I think what's so hard about that in my experience, and I know other people resonate too, is that like you have a theory, like a hypothesis that you develop over time. And sometimes you're like, okay, I'm always going to avoid that thing that triggers me. But then sometimes you accidentally do that thing and realize it didn't trigger you that time, right? Like,
Yeah.
so you can't be too hard on yourself those times when you did. You're like, oh, let me just push it and see. Because for all you knew, it could have actually been like, oh, wow, I've outgrown that. Like something in my body has changed.
Yeah, because our bodies are constantly changing and evolving. And it's like it happens just with general allergies. People will just
Mhm.
stop being allergic to things or so
Yeah.
that makes so much sense to me.
Yeah, but like, do you find it like, do you ever get just like so frustrated when that happens? Like, or I mean, I feel like, sorry, my dog just wanted to say hi. This is Teddy.
Oh my gosh, what a
He's
cutie.
so
Hello.
cute.
I love dogs. Oh,
He's so cute.
mine's hiding.
We have to do like a little dog picture at the end. But like,
Yes.
because I feel like I always say like insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result, but it can make you feel insane to like, because other times you'll be like, oh, I actually ate really well and like avoided all my trigger foods and I still feel like crap. And you're like, why? Like it can just
Yeah.
drive you nuts,
Yeah, because it's like you think you have the answer, and then like I'll
Yes.
still have days, and then I immediately start going, it's back. Like where I'll
Um,
have like a low level but more noticeable amount of just joint pain like in the morning. I am still a witch for rain is coming. Like
yeah.
I like I'm better at predicting rain than my weather app. It's insane. I'll just be like, I feel it in my joints.
Luckily you live in LA, so you're not having too much, right?
Yeah, I know. I think about that too. I'm like, oh man, like if I did have it as a kid, what a terrible place to have lived in the like highest. I mean, you're in the Pacific Northwest, and I'm like,
Yeah.
do you
And
get affected by the
so this is what's interesting for me, and this is just again where my body does not follow the typical trend in this case. For me, what reliably will result in swelling and joint pain for me is heat and humidity and rain. So like Hawaii. When I go to
oh
Hawaii and we went to Japan, that humidity, yeah, I know. So but for some reason, even though technically Seattle's humid a lot because I guess, because of the rain, we had a lot of mist and rain, but because it's not that hot, for whatever weird reason, it doesn't
that
affect me
caused the
that badly.
same.
Yeah, yeah. So again, we're all so different. And like I'm
It,
really heat intolerant and just in general. And some people with RA are like, I ran triathlons in the desert. Like, like you just don't like,
it's so different. And I also, do you have this thing where if I have anything else going on in my body, any type of pain, any weird reaction, I'm Googling like rheumatoid arthritis and like to
I mean, because
see,
you
is
never know.
this a thing that other people with RA get? Is this completely random?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. No, I'm definitely, I think like, or I'll think that I've thought of everything and then I'll learn something else can be affected by RA. Like I was having a hard time swallowing and turns out there's a joint in your throat, like the
that
trigeminal joint.
I remember reading about that and having an
I was like,
absolute future tripping meltdown of, I mean, this is like literally a moment of, hey, let's back it up and like be in the present. And why are you running away with this? But I was like, if my throat joint goes, my career is, and it's like, you have a sore throat. Take a breath.
yeah.
Like,
No, catastrophize. Yeah. You're in the chronic catastrophizer club. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and it's part of your brain. I always try to say, my brain, thank you, brain, for trying to protect me.
Yeah,
You're
you
just
did it.
you're
Good
working really
job.
hard. But yeah, like we can't predict, even if we could predict everything back, if it can happen, we can't do anything about it. So
Yeah.
just
So it's
chill.
like, let's be here.
Yeah. Oh, so
Yeah.
so it sounds like you're right now in like a really like a no active disease state, which is
Yeah.
super
It's
cool. Cool. I was like crazy
yeah.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean it is. And I'm trying to not, I still have that,
You don't
like,
jinx
is
it.
the other shoe gonna drop of it's
Yeah.
gonna, like, if I'm too grateful, if I'm too like happy about that, is it gonna be like, ha ha, I'm back? But
Or like she
I
said, like we recorded this episode on September 11th, 2024, and like now you're listening to it and like, oh, actually, yeah. No, but
yeah.
all you have is the present. All we have, and that's, I mean, most people like me, it's very unlikely that I will be in a no disease activity state just based on the severity of my RA when I got diagnosed. I'm positive, positive on like all the markers. But right now I'm wearing this with a flu yesterday. Flying also makes me
Flying gets me a little bit too,
yeah,
still. Yeah, yeah.
but normally I'm in very low disease activity with the medications I'm on, primarily in lifestyle stuff. But you know, it's all you can do is just, I have the same shoe dropping worry. Like even if this isn't a perfect state, it still could be a lot worse. So is this the best I'm ever
Yes.
gonna feel right now? I don't know.
Yeah, and it's just like, okay, and I do try to be like, I try to do gratitude for,
Mhm.
the health I do have, because you just never know. And also it's just a thing to be aware of, okay, this could change, and I'm fully aware of that. And, if that happens and we have to go back to a medication and doing different things, like I'm prepared to do that. So it's just taking it one day at a time.
Yeah. Yeah. No, oh my gosh, I love all these reflections, and I'm just looking at the time and realizing that I definitely wanted to ask you about comedy.
Yay!
I remember, I don't know if you listened to Conan O'Brien's podcast, but he's always saying like the most unfunny thing is trying to talk about comedy and like why things are funny, like deconstructing, like why is it funny? Like it's actually so like not funny. But so anyway,
He's
I'm
not
trying to,
wrong.
but yeah, yeah. But I mean, first of all, like, yeah, how did you, I am really curious how you initially got into comedy, and then like so two-part, like one is how you got into it just in the first place, and then what has the response been to the things you've shared about rheumatoid arthritis? Because I've seen people's, I've stalked you online before, yeah, like, and seen that, yeah, like you said earlier, people really like feel seen, but sometimes there are also people, most of it's positive, but then there's always people, because I do funny videos, quote unquote, too. I'm not a comedian like you, but then
I've
sometimes
seen
people
your
are like,
videos. They are very
oh,
funny.
thank you. Oh my God, thank you. But sometimes people are like, and this is totally their valid experience, opinion, but they're like, this is not like, why are you making fun of this disease? Like, this is a serious disease. And like, so it's kind of okay. Anyway, but first, okay.
Not me eye rolling as you said that, like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I've
Well,
gotten
I'm such
those
a
people
people,
too.
maybe you're not a people pleaser as much as I am, because I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to make you feel bad. I'm sorry. I love
Oh,
you.
that's the hardest part, is being like, I did this to bring joy, and now you're upset. And I, I, I oscillate between that and then moments where I want to go, oh, shut up. Like, I mean,
Welcome to being on the internet, I guess. It's not really
I,
specific to rheumatoid arthritis.
I know there's always going to be someone's going to be unhappy if you share anything. And I guess that's the risk of putting out art, or, it's like, in my healthiest moments when I'm being centered and, you know, taking care of my own wellness, I go, I feel bad that that person is in such a place of pain that all they can see is the negative, and I hope they figure it out. But I'm not always in those moments, and I'm like, hey, this is
Yeah.
my experience. But
Well, yeah. But how did you start? I'm so curious.
I mean, I don't think it's that uncommon to say this for comedians, but I think I got into comedy as a coping mechanism. It was I had a bit of a traumatic childhood, a little wild family life, and I think it's stems from being a people pleaser, but it was a way to keep the peace in my house. And then I was kind of a weirdo little kid, and we moved from Mississippi to Alaska, and my way of making friends was, I want to just say being funny, but it was real, like, making fun of myself before anyone else could, kind of thing, kind of humor.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I don't know, that just sort of evolved into me always being kind of the funny person in class, and like at the end of high school, I was like hosting the assemblies and doing silly, it's just a lot of silly things and really enjoying it. And I mean, I went to college thinking I want to do comedy, but I also want to have, some type of stable fallback, which I graduated in 2009, which
Oh
was just the
no.
worst time to go into the job market anyway. So it's like, haha, you thought you'd have a stable career. So yeah, it was just I was always just a funny kid, in a little bit of a weirdo, but in a funny way. And I think I dealt with my own like emotional and like family trauma that way, and then that stemmed into just how I looked at life, and of course how I dealt with physical issues as well, which is where that bit that you saw where I talk about rheumatoid arthritis came from. And it was
Oh.
from a place of frustration of, I'm sure you deal with this, of people giving unsolicited, and I understand people giving advice. Like, I understand the intention is I am trying to connect with you and I want to be helpful, but I think anyone who has a chronic anything can relate to the fact that it's like, yeah, you don't think I've looked into it?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. It was a very relatable, it's a relatable moment. Because so many of us have had, and you're exactly right that the intention of many people when they give unsolicited advice is truly positive. Like, and so it's complicated because you want to be like, shut up, but you're also like, I acknowledge that even though the words you're saying to me are like completely not correct, what you're trying to do is help me, and thank you. Like, I'm great, like I'm a big mix of emotions. Like, I'm grateful that you want to help me. I'm annoyed that what you're saying is not helpful, but
Yeah.
like,
And then a little bit of it comes from like, you know, at least
insulted or
for
maybe.
me, is like, actually, that doesn't work. And maybe a little bit of my anger is that I'm mad that that doesn't work. Like
Oh my God, that's
that.
so, I wish, like, it's like for you, I'm jealous of you that like diet works. I've been gluten-free and it helps my GI. I do have GI issues on top, like that are separate from my
Oh,
RA. And so
girl,
I'm
same.
gluten-free for that reason. But it made no difference in my joint pain eliminating gluten.
And
I was
I
annoyed.
totally know that. That's why
Yeah.
I don't go on. Like, I hate, also, here's something embarrassing. I actually do feel a little bit better when I'm doing yoga. I can't say that as a
Oh,
person with arthritis, because that's the
she would.
first thing people
She
say to
doesn't.
us. And it's like, how fucking dare
No.
you?
I know. No, no, no. It's so true. Me too. I'm like, let's not, like, yoga has become this like catch-all term for like an example of a common unsolicited advice that's not welcomed. But like, no, mine is exercise. I'm like, I know the last thing you want to hear is that like exercise is helpful, but like, not just my personal experience, but there's so much research on
Oh,
exercise,
yeah.
relieving fatigue and pain and
Oh, it's a miles difference. And
and
it's one of
mental
the,
health. Yeah.
yeah, it's another thing that I'm like, I wish it wasn't. I wish I didn't know that for me, if I go move my ass for 30 minutes, I'm going to physically feel better, but also, yeah, my brain is going to be way more just leveled out.
Yeah, the brain fog. Because I think with I don't know how you separate ADHD from brain fog. I mean, it's probably different for each person, but the brain fog
I,
from rheumatoid arthritis, I mean, clinically, it's called like cognitive dysfunction. And like most providers are not taught. I mean, including myself, I didn't learn anything about how to manage cognitive dysfunction related to rheumatoid arthritis in my OT program. We learned about cognitive dysfunction for like brain injury and for other things, but you're like, well, what do you do? Like, no one knows. So you just have to trial and error. For me, my focus and energy are so much better when I exercise, but I have to, not overdo it.
same.
Because you're also like, but also if I exercise too hard, then I'll feel even worse and I can't think at all. And then I
Yeah, and
can't,
that's a fine line, because sometimes,
yeah.
I don't know about you, but I'll be like feeling good in the moment and I'm like, I could push it a little bit more. And it's like,
Yeah. Oh my
just
God.
do the plan. Stick to the plan.
No,
Why,
wayward
like,
optimism is what I call it. Yeah, I'm just always like, it'll be fine. And like, flash forward 4 days later, it was not, 4 hours later, it was not fine. Like,
yeah, just on my couch, like, I've made a huge mistake.
yes, yes. Oh my God. Um, okay, sorry. So yeah, so wait, so this is this thing. I have a friend who's done stand-up comedy, and it was so funny because one day I like accidentally did a faux pas, and I was like, well, do you ever do improv? Like, do you also do improv? He's like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. These are
So
like
many stand-up comedians are
so different.
mortified by that.
Yeah. I was like,
I love improv.
oh, good. Okay. Okay. I was just gonna ask you like what made you start the stand-up specifically? Is it just that that was just a like did you start it in college or
I had done I didn't know that this is kind of a unique thing, but my high school and the high schools in the city I grew up in had improv teams, and we would do
oh my God, in Alaska?
these.
That's so
Yeah.
cool. That's so
And
cool.
I didn't know that was unique because I've talked to other people and like, you guys had an improv team? And I was like, yeah, it was just, we would just do games. It was like, whose line is it anyway competitions. And I honestly kind of forgot about it until recently when I was talking to a friend and I was like, oh yeah, we used to do this. But that was my first experience into improv is we had this cool like drama teacher who also was a social studies, just a cool guy. And I was on that team and I loved it. And then throughout college, I wasn't really doing anything. I was just saying someday I'll do comedy. My like at the time I thought I would love to be on SNL one day. And I say that I'm not turning down SNL. No, I don't want to I'm not like I've moved on. But I didn't know how do you get on SNL? And I had heard through, I've watched interviews and read books and stuff of some of them are stand-up comedians. So I was like, I'll try stand-up comedy. And I signed up for an open mic. And just the first time I did stand-up, like the first laugh I got, it was like it was just a feeling. It was like I found the thing that I was supposed to do. It like ignited some sort of, honestly, I want to call it a spark. It was just a sick addiction where I was like, I gotta do more. But
No,
um
I've heard that from other like just again, I'll be like, this is like my expertise is listening to the like Conan O'Brien's podcast and a bunch of other like comedian podcasts. But like a lot of them say that. Like it's like this lightning bolt that happens the first time you try it. It's so fascinating to me.
Yeah, it's like I didn't expect that to happen. I just thought like, oh, I'll go up and see how this goes. And
Just try it, have
it was
fun.
just like, this is what I want to do. I want to do this. And so
And now you're doing it. I'm sorry, that is so cool.
it is. I worked another year. I was just like, it was my last semester of college. I worked another year, 3 jobs, just saved. I was going to college in Florida at the time. And then I drove out to California and hit the ground running. And I did take some improv classes at first and also do stand up. And what I realized is it's very hard to really make anything happen if you don't lean all the way into one. So I just made the choice of I'll lean into stand up.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, probably at the time because it was cheaper. Because improv, you kind of have to almost do classes to meet people. And I'm like, stand up, I can go to open mics and just show up. And
Interesting. Yeah.
but
I
I
also
love
think it's like
both.
I'm a kind of a control freak, so but I'm also very social. So yeah, I think I feel like I like both of them. For different reasons. Like I would like I have zero experience doing any of these. This is just my head in my head. I've also been like, I want to be an SNL one day. Like I'm 43 years old. Have I taken any action towards that? No. It's just this is a thought
But
experiment
it's
in my
a
head.
dream we all have.
Yeah, a dream we all have. And I'm like, okay, like the stand-up comedy is like you can control what you say, like so
Yes.
you so those who are listening don't know, it's like that's the people who like go up and they're like, hey, it's Jerry Seinfeld, like, what's the thing about corn nuts? Like,
Just
are they a
one
corn or
person
are
in a
they a nut?
mic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, versus like
That's great.
I tell it to my husband all the time. He's like, shut up. Like,
He's like, oh
is
God,
it
she's
a
doing corn
corn or
nuts
is it a
again.
nut? Um
Disgust.
But then the improv is where you're with a group of people improvising like each
Yeah,
night.
like making it up on the spot. And that is what I liked about improv. And I did, so there's a school out here that a lot of big SNL people have come out of, called the Groundlings. And I did
Yeah.
their
Oh, I
classes
listen to Dax
last year.
Shepard too. He has psoriatic arthritis.
I didn't know
And
that.
he talks about it honestly. His podcast episodes are very long. So if you listen to all of them, he has like a fact check at the end, which is really just like a chit chat with him and the co-host Monica. And
Oh,
they
wow.
chat like about literally the most random stuff and a little bit of like 2 seconds of fact checking. And then he'll be like, oh, and he talked about diet too. Like dietary changes have had a really positive impact for him. I'm so
Oh,
sorry. I keep jumping in, but he
no,
talks to the
it's
groundlings a
fine.
lot. That's like where he met. He like became friends with Amy Poehler there, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Or
No, not Amy Poehler. He became friends
UCB.
with Amy later. But anyway,
Um, oh, well,
yeah.
I did the program
That's so
last
cool.
year in between because it's like it's classes and then you can eventually if you graduate all the classes, then you can become like they have a thing called Sunday Company and Main Company that does do these big performances. I couldn't do those anyways, I realized at a certain point because they're Friday, Saturday nights, and I'm like, oh, that's when I go on the road. But I did the classes and everything and I just had the best time. And it was because I'm a bit of a control freak too, a bit. Anyone who knows me is laughing, going, a bit. Um,
I won't tell.
it's an exercise in being present and also letting go of control. And aside, like, I really loved that. I think it was something I needed, but also I had the luxury of going into the program. You know, a lot of people come out and it's the first thing they do and they're like, I'm going to make it. And which is, there's nothing wrong with that. But because I've already, in my own way, I'm still up and coming in terms of being a big name in stand-up comedy, but I make a living doing stand-up comedy. I'm very grateful for that. That's it. The fact that that's hard to do is not lost on me. It sort of eliminated this pressure of I'm in this class to try to make it. And I was able to go in and go, this is just for fun for me. And I needed that. And getting to do improv for fun, and you're not like the stakes, I gotta be better than the other guys. It actually, I think, it made me better than I would have been if I was like, how do I make this scene funny? It was like I was able to just be there and react. And I think everyone should take an improv class. It's a really incredible, fun experience, and you meet great people.
That's so awesome. I just that offhand comment I didn't even know was like from my friends saying like, oh my God, how dare you?
But so many stand-ups, it's like this. And what I noticed when I took the improv class was like, oh, well, this is going to be so inside stand-up comedy, but improv comedians aren't sitting around going stand-ups, but stand-ups are like improvisers. And I, for a little while, was pretty bi-coastal. Like before 2020, I was doing a lot of spots in New York. I'd go for chunks at a time. Sometimes I'd swap places with other comics. And in New York, stand-up comics are always like, oh, these LA comics. LA comics don't talk about New York. I'm like, I think it's because we're getting sun and we're happy and we're not trapped on the train. And I love New York and it's my favorite place to do comedy, but it's just such a funny disparity that like that. And then stand-ups being like improvisers and improvs, like you do. Everyone thought it was so cool. They're like, I love the Comedy Store. I've seen you there. Can we come to a show? And I'm like, this would never happen the other way around.
That is so fun. No, it's so true. It's gosh.
And then I was having to come out to my stand-up comic friends. It's like, well, I've been doing improv. Like,
oh my God.
Like I've been doing heroin.
So funny. It is so silly because yeah, they're both about like you're doing something. Well, yeah, it does seem like maybe the improv is more of like this internal experience of like being in the present moment. But in each case, there is an audience, right? And you're like doing it to, well, I guess maybe not in the classes for improv, but you're both trying to bring, I'm assuming, bring joy or make people think and, you know, entertain them. Yeah. So yeah, I used to be a really big in the swing dancing scene. And like, let me tell you,
that's awesome.
Well, let me tell you, I was specifically in the Lindy Hop and East Coast swing. I was not a West Coast swing dancer. It's similar, and it's actually they're similar, but and there is respect because both people are like we love dance and we love being in the ballrooms or whatever and going dancing to live music. And so it's not really the same as like stand-up versus improv, but it's like don't mistake, like I'm not a West Coast swing dancer.
Yeah, it's so funny that like. That just must be human nature to have to differentiate yourself. Because I feel like I go on the road and you could go to any state in the middle of the country and just make fun of the state next to it. And they're like, yeah, get it.
Oh my gosh. It's so true. I think it's like that belonging. Like, I think everyone wants to feel like they belong to something. And so, yeah, there is something that, okay, I'm connecting the dots to chronic illness to bring it back to that. It's like, I've even had people say, well, rheumatoid arthritis gets all the awareness. Like, what about X kind of arthritis? Axial, like non-radiographic axial spondyloarthritis. Now, I don't envy them having to say that name because that's a really long diagnosis.
Yeah, already not helping with the awareness.
Yeah, and then or even psoriatic arthritis has less awareness, and so people will be like, oh, well, you don't understand. Like, you're lumping us all together, but like our conditions are different, which is it's just an interesting or. Yeah. Anyway, it's just.
That's so. It feels. You're right. That it almost is a universal. Like, I want to be part of a group, but I want to be different. I want to be an individual, but also I want to belong. It's like, what are we doing?
Just be. Have it all. Just be. Oh my God, that's gonna be the title of it. Do you listen to Las Culturistas with Matt Rogers?
No.
Okay,
I should.
I love them so much.
I
And
don't listen to enough podcasts. I'm gonna add that one into my
oh, well,
rotation.
I know the same thing. People like I actually listen to a lot of podcasts that are like about pop culture or just so like celebrity interviews, like the Conan O'Brien, one and stuff like that. And it's like, or Armchair Expert with Dax Shepard. And it's like, and people are like, oh, well, do you listen to like the arthritis, other like, chronic illness podcasts? And I'm like, when I'm listening to podcasts, it's like my downtime,
It's a break,
Yeah,
yeah.
so
That's
I
why
don't want to be listening to, yeah. So maybe in your case,
I
maybe
think
you
that's
would want
why I
to
don't
listen to
listen to
comedy.
comedy.
Yeah,
I'm always
yeah.
listening to my boyfriend. It just like makes fun of me. The amount of like development and self-help or just
Oh,
like
that's awesome.
motivational podcasts I listen to. But I mean, it is good, but sometimes I already, and I, I don't know if you can relate to this as like an ADHD type, but
Mhm.
I already come up with too many like business project ideas. And then I'm listening to these things like I should make a course about, and he's like, no, just write
Yeah,
jokes,
yeah.
focus
Oh,
on the goal.
yeah. Let me introduce you to my ADHD hobby graveyard. Yeah, and
Yes.
I actually like so. Okay, yeah, yes, I relate. I 100%. I
I've had to
100%.
grieve the loss of like
But um,
projects I cannot do.
no, totally. I just and I started this like thought experiment where I just say like, like no matter what, even if I didn't have rheumatoid arthritis, right? There are only 24 hours in the day. So I try not
Yes.
to tie like my limitations and what I want to do and like achieve in my life to the condition because yes, to validate like if your disease is active and if you have a lot going on, like there are going to be times you have to say no to things,
Absolutely.
not push your body too hard. But also it's like I know my personality and I know what I was like in the 21 years before I had RA. I had endless things I wanted to do, endless, like so I
Yes.
woudd have been able to. But I'm always telling my husband, oh, I'm gonna write next year. I'm gonna write the Great American Novel, or I'm like, oh, I want to write a book. Yeah, I want to. Yeah, I
Same.
so many things. Oh, you should probably write a book.
I want to start 3 different podcasts. It's
Oh my
like,
gosh, yeah, it's okay that's the thing that we need. It's like I was listening. I always listen to a business podcast too, and it was like you need what do they call it? I already forgot, but it's like my auditory memory is really poor. Like my visual memory is really good. So when I read something, I remember it, but when I listen to it, I don't remember. It was something like you
it's
need like executors and then you need like visionaries. And so like I'm like the visionary and I
yeah, the
start
idea people.
yeah, we're the idea people. I start the execution, but I need someone else to finish it. Like
Yeah, here's an idea. Can you do it?
yeah, that's what we
Because I have
need.
other ideas to idea.
Yeah, yes. In grad school, I had a good friend who she was like, we were such a good team because I was always the one that had all the ideas, and she was like, okay, so like let's funnel it down. Like, so out of these
Yeah.
16 ideas, we're gonna do the one, and yeah. So it sounds like your boyfriend is like a good fit.
He's been very good at like reining me in on, he works on the industry side of
Oh, cool.
entertainment. So that's just coincidental and has been very helpful though of like reminding me, hey, like here's the goals you set and also just like encouraging me like if you keep focusing on those, they're gonna keep growing. So don't let being in the middle because it's easy to just you get bored or like I didn't get the dopamine hit from, a
Mm,
quote big win or whatever when you're in the middle of a project that you get when
that's
you start one and it's all
mhm.
excitement.
Oh, so true. So true. Oh my gosh. When you mentioned a podcast, okay, so I should get on just time wise, only because I don't want to like I could talk to you all day. But I was gonna ask, like, do you have a favorite podcast or favorite book or show you've been consuming lately on
Um, big fan of Mel Robbins.
Oh, Melra, she tells it straight.
She does. I love her. And this a book I read recently, which I think is kind of related to what we're talking about with all our ideas, and I've honestly been pushing it on people, is I can't remember the author's name, but there's a book called The Perfectionist Guide to Losing Control.
Okay, this is synergy because someone in my Room to Thrive support like group, we have an alumni group that keeps meeting. Someone there just recommended that to me. I just bought it. I haven't read it yet.
I just finished it. It's Catherine Morgan Schaeffler is the author. I just looked it up. That was very helpful and eye-opening to me because I've had people tell me I'm a perfectionist. I wish there was a different word because I'm like, I'm so far from perfect, but
no, that's the thing. That's the thing. But you're trying to be. Yeah, I had this.
Yeah, and it really like honed in on like, oh, she breaks down to 5 different types of perfectionism. I have a friend who I've recommended to like 8 friends and then been like, I hope you're not taking offense to this. It just was helpful to me and maybe it won't be helpful to you. But I have one friend who I was like, she's also a comedian. And I was like, oh, I think you'll really like this book will be good for you. You'll relate to it. And she posted a picture of, because she was there's a quiz portion to it, and she was taking that online.
Yeah.
And she's like, it's like the second question, and she's like, I'm taking a quick question on perfectionism, and I got to this one, and I can't figure out which answer makes the most sense, and I'm absolutely breaking down, and I'm like, oh, that's so hilariously on point for who the book is for. But
yeah. You're like, I'm a failed perfectionist because I'm not perfect yet. You're like, okay with that. But
yeah, and it just like gave a lot of great reframing tips, and then like ways to kind of use whatever your quote type of perfectionism is as a strength. And
right.
And also just validated for me some of the things I have this thing where sometimes I think things I do are really unique and quirky and crazy. Like that I'm like, I'm a crazy person. And then I go, oh, this is human. This is kind of, a lot of people are like this. I'm not a crazy person.
Yes. Yeah. I recommend Kristen Neff. Her books on self-compassion are really good on that. Just like understanding, like, just forgiving yourself for being human, or no way, not, I shouldn't say forgiving. That sounds like very religious. I'm not religious, but like, you know what I mean? Like just being
like self-compassion, like just being like, hey, we all like, don't always go 100% all the time. And
congratulations, you miss the mark. Human. Yeah.
Like, oh, that's great. I have it pulled up. I'm definitely gonna get into that.
Oh, and I haven't checked out. I need to check out Mel Robbins' podcast. I listened to it for a little while and then I forgot about it.
I go through ups and downs with her because sometimes I'm like, Mel, you've just made up a list to get an episode out. Like I'm fighting with a woman I don't know, and I'm like, okay, this one's a stretch. But then I come back. I'm like, she got me again.
Oh my gosh. No, that's do you have any best or favorite words of advice for somebody who might be listening who's newly diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis?
I would say, gosh, what do I even want to say? That you don't, this is more about being a people pleaser than probably rheumatoid arthritis. Yeah. You don't have to take every piece of advice everyone gives you deeply seriously. Like, look into stuff, listen to your body, but also it's okay to not have to, if you find a thing that's working for you and you're feeling better or feeling okay or in some type of control, don't feel like you have to go mixing it up because someone's like, I read this thing about whatever. Grains of salt, I guess, is what I would take other people's advice with a grain of salt and listen to your body.
That's really important. You can get, especially if you're a people pleaser. I really resonate with that. I think it was.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, I do think that there is some type of component that it doesn't surprise me when someone with an autoimmune disease also is a people pleaser. I just think there's some type of emotional trauma, holding stuff in or trying to hold the world together that can be feeding this. And I'm not saying it's causing it, but it doesn't surprise me that like people who are trying to help everyone else's bodies are like, what about us?
Yeah. No, it is definitely, it can exacerbate it for sure. And I definitely, when you said that, I did think to myself, and it might just be the people I've encountered through social media. But that does seem like there's a lot of us out there, the kind of anxious overachiever autoimmune.
Yeah. It's interesting that like, there's like, I've noticed that too. But, and then it's like, maybe that's just like attracting like, and that's just who I'm seeing. But it's something I have noticed and always been like, are these somehow feeding one another?
Yeah, who knows? I mean, I think that's the thing. Nobody knows the cause of rheumatoid arthritis at this time. So, I mean, I think the scientific consensus is that it's most likely an inherited predisposition that meets an environmental trigger, which could be something like a virus, could be something like a trauma, emotional trauma. That certainly childhood adverse ACEs, like adverse childhood events, people who have ACEs or high ACEs score are more likely to have an autoimmune disease in general.
Yes.
There's just no one silver bullet cause, and
I think that's also important for people newly diagnosed to remember that,
yeah.
like, if someone tells you they know what's causing it.
And just because there may be something that triggered it doesn't mean that if you can't untrigger, like you can't control it. And people are always like, oh, well, you're going to reverse it. Like, no, my root cause of my rheumatoid arthritis is probably that I have a family history of it, and I got a virus. I did get a stomach virus.
The thing already happened.
Yeah, it's like, so I can't, like, that doesn't help me. It's like, oh, because your umbrella helped you in the rain doesn't mean that, like, if you like put the umbrella out, it'll control whether it rains again. Like, it's like opposite. You know what I mean? It's like
such a great way to say it. And also the other thing I would advise on is, like, try to not let yourself get in the worst case scenario spiral. I did that like a little bit at the start, where, like, what is the worst possible thing that how this could go, and it's, I hate to say it, meditation helped me a lot with, not with my arthritis, but with how my brain reacted to it. So,
yeah. Oh,
and being able to be present.
I was super dragged kicking and streaming to, like, mindfulness and meditation and acceptance. And they've all been, like, so helpful.
I know, but I'm like, okay, meditating, and it's not, once you give up and start doing it, it's not as woo-woo as it, or it doesn't have to be as woo-woo as I think a lot of people think it is. And that building the muscle of just catching yourself kind of spiraling about the future has been very helpful to me.
Yeah. So what do they call it? I always want to say future surfing, but that's not the word.
Future tripping? I don't know.
Future tripping. Yeah. Yeah. I remember when I had never went to therapy until my son was about 1 year old, and I was like, okay, I'm struggling.
Mama needs help.
I remember asking her, like, is it still postpartum, like, anxiety, depression when you're, like, the baby's a year old? She's like, oh yeah. She's like, I actually get a lot of people who are like, they just tell their brain, and this is exactly what happened to me. It's like, just make it through the first year. Just make it through the first year.
And you think it'll just go away.
Yeah.
I think my mom still has it, and I'm in my 30s, so Godspeed.
Honestly, yeah. Whenever I forget things, I'm like, it's mom brain. They're like, oh, how old is your baby? I'm like, he's 10. But yeah, I remember my therapist being like, it seems like you have this belief that if you just think about all the worst case scenarios, then, like, you're going to be protected from bad things happening. But, like, has that actually been the case? Like, have you been able to
control anything from doing that?
Like, no. Like, so it feels good. What do they call it? Like, it's like spinning your wheels in the mud, like, you feel like you're going somewhere, or you're doing something, you're expending energy, but you're not going anywhere.
Yeah. And it's like, through the act of just trying to do something, it's like you're trying to get this false sense of control. God, I relate to that so deeply.
Oh my gosh. My therapist is, like, amazing. I need to clone her. Okay. Last one of the rapid fire questions, but obviously which each can be, like, a long question, but is what is it? Yeah. What does it mean for you to live a good life and thrive with rheumatic disease? Even if it's
well, for me, it just means being grateful when I'm having low pain days, and meeting my body where it's at, and doing what I can while honoring, that sometimes I have to take a little bit slower and pace myself, and being okay with that. And also that that my body has to operate a little differently than it used to. Maybe it isn't a failure, isn't a loss. It's just a change in how we do things. It operates how it's supposed to for me in this moment. And I guess that is that.
No, I love that, meeting your body where it's at. I think I've been kicking around the idea a lot lately of, like, internalized ableism and, like, what that looks like and what that feels like. And I think part of it could be, like, a sense that I can't possibly have a good life with this thing. Like, it's actually, like, a weird form. Like, I'm talking about back like when you're first diagnosed. I'm not saying you did not say anything that felt ableist to me at all, but I'm thinking, like, what people are like, it's like this weird idea that we grow up with, and like an almost like an ableist culture where it's like, well, people with disabilities or health conditions are either like, it's either like a complete tragedy or it's like a complete, like they overcame it and now they're inspirational,
Yeah, instead of just being it's like a human.
Yeah, you're like, it's like we have it, like everyone has struggles. Like mine happened to be the arthritis struggles. Like I also don't have a lot of struggles that some other people have. And like, so it's just, I don't know. Anyway, kind of a half-formed thought, but it
Yeah,
just,
I get it though. Yeah, it's like meeting your body where you're at. That's so true too, because the amount like, and I think you really can't realize how much internalized ableism you have until you suddenly have your own struggle that you're like, oh,
yeah.
what does this mean for all of these things?
Well, when
And
you
that it's
say, oh, sorry.
fine.
Yeah.
That it's okay to have to operate differently. I think
Yes.
for me, it's so funny that admitting a struggle with your self-worth sometimes feels like an additional layer of like a struggle with your self-worth, but like you're just as worthy. I'm just as worthy of anything I get, anything I earn, anything I do, anything I have with arthritis as I am or would be if I didn't have it.
hmm I mean, that's powerful. And like, yeah, when you first said meeting my body where it's at, I was thinking specifically about like, yeah, when you say meeting my body when I have just been diagnosed with a disease, or even just now, it's 21 years down the line, it's like you're like actually meeting that with like love and compassion and gratitude versus saying, oh, my body's like, there's this problem with my body that I need to like solve. And again, not to say that like we want to get our disease into the best
Of
possible state it can
course.
be, especially in the early days. If you're listening and newly diagnosed, you do typically, the recommendation is to aim for full remission, like whether it's typically medicated. So you
Yes.
don't want to settle too quickly, but also at some point it's about saying like, I still can love and embrace and connect with this body and be grateful for it, even though it has like, I'm like, I sometimes just feel like compassionate towards my little like immune cells that are like, you're trying so hard.
You're
Like,
working so hard. Yeah.
yeah,
And it's like,
I'm sorry you're doing the wrong thing, but yeah.
I have been a cynical person for a lot of my life. So it has taken a lot of work to even like to get over the self-judgment of that comes with self-love of almost talking to your body and being grateful and like of the things it is doing and how hard it works for us. And that, man, I can get real emotional and corny as hell talking about that stuff. But
Well, I
yeah,
think as a comedian, especially, it's really great that you're able, because I think that's something I have noticed about a lot of comedians is that they seem to be like, they're like afraid of being emotionally vulnerable. It's seen as like a weakness. And I love that
yes.
you're like, no, I'm gonna be vulnerable and be like, not to say that your comedy is like that in the sense of like, you're not sitting there being like, you know what I mean? But I'm saying like right now, yeah, anyway.
Yeah, no, well, it is a thing because there is a thing with comedians where they want to be seen as like cool and tough and just
hmm
like fuck this, fuck that. And a thing I didn't mean to happen when I like wrote the joke about arthritis, I didn't go like, I'm gonna write a joke for all of my people who are feeling
Yeah.
the struggle. I didn't go like, this is for us, you know? But then when I had people reaching out and going like, oh my God, thank you for saying this. And like, thank you for that's in my brain and you put it into words in front of an audience and in a way that like I had never said out loud. And like, that's been great is going, oh, I think there's so much strength and vulnerability and we are really not taught that as a society. And I wish we were that like you opening up and being honest and
hmm
caring with yourself helps other people around you.
100%. And I just want to give like kudos to you or whatnot, but I'll just, when you talked about your childhood being difficult, like I always say like my childhood was like, and I know my mom listens to the podcast. Hi, mom. My childhood, and this is literally what my
It's always
therapist.
my disclaimer too, like, hey mom, I'm gonna
Hi.
say a thing about you.
Okay. Well, no, I mean, like I just happen to have had like literally growing up in like Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. Like my childhood
Oh,
was, according to my therapist, like a positive. She called it a positive outlier. Like literally, that's how good. Like it was truly like, and I'm not just talking like socioeconomic or anything like that. It's like the love and this attachment and security I had as a child, and was like my childhood alone, the fact that I have RA is proof that like childhood trauma, like or
it is
childhood
not the direct
because
correlation.
I
Yeah,
did
it's
not
not the
have childhood
causality.
trauma. Like there's
Yeah.
no mistaking. There's no gray area that just didn't happen.
Like we can rule that out as the thing that
Yeah,
causes it for all of
as
us.
the single cause,
Uh
there may be multi-cause,
yeah.
causes, but just the fact that like I think it's hard enough. I mean, even me being so like, I feel like I grew up in the 80s when it was all about like self-esteem movement and like telling everyone they're the most special person and giving them a trophy. I like internalized all of that in a positive sense. I'm like, yes,
Yeah.
I am amazing. Yes.
You're like, I do deserve a trophy. I
Yeah.
love that.
But even that, it was hard for me to go to therapy because I went to therapy, but then it was hard for me to well, at first I was like, well, I shouldn't go to therapy because like isn't that for people that had a hard childhood? Like I just didn't
Yes.
understand that it could be for people with like other kinds of issues. And then also like I was always comfortable talking about my arthritis, but I wasn't comfortable talking about mental health and my therapy. And I think it was that deep-seated like I want to be seen as strong and like talking about having to go to therapy is like a weakness, you know? And
Yeah, and then like admitting your own emotional things is like, oh, now and there's not anything wrong with having those things. We all have them, but like it is
yeah,
that like internalized, well, now I'm a person who's in therapy for my mental health. And we just go, you know,
yeah.
I mean, it's gotten so much better, but I deeply relate to like, oh, if I admit that I'm not okay, then I'm not okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I
I mean,
want to be perfect. I'm strong. And like, it's like, yeah, you can also need to talk to somebody.
yeah, it's like these, yeah, two things that
Can exist.
they
Yeah.
can coexist. And so I just, yeah, that's, I don't know. I'm excited for you to continue your comedy career and whether you do more, will you do a lot more on arthritis or not? Yeah, that the joke that went viral is like living in infamy. Like,
I know, and I'm almost like, I don't know if I don't know if I could top
top.
that
Oh no.
without
Such a perfectionist thing to say, though. You're gonna be fine. Yeah, this is the thing. I'm sure you find this with comedy, but I find just as being like a content creator on Instagram and you know stuff. And I consider myself like a patient educator, but I create content to educate
yes.
and people and support them. But
And I love it.
you never know what you were saying. You didn't set out with that joke to be like. And by the way, I'm gonna put the link to this joke. We're like super teasing this joke right now. Like the joke. Sorry, guys, you have to go.
So much pressure.
Like,
good luck. Find it somewhere.
this is the tease. We're teasing them to be, yeah. But it's like you don't know what's going to resonate with people. Like there are so many times, even to this day, literally today, the video I put out today. I'm like, this video is going to resonate like so hard with people, and like it didn't seem like immediately seem to resonate as much as other ones where I spent like 2 seconds on it, and I'm like, this is funny.
Story of my life.
I mean,
or it's like the thing I spend the least amount of time on. That's the thing people are like, yes. And then the thing I will spend hours curating and being like,
yeah,
this is gonna change everything. Just no one even cares.
You just don't know. So you just had to put it out. So maybe yeah. Most likely, if you do put out a joke that goes even more viral for that in the arthritis community, it won't be one that you thought was going to. So
yeah, it'll be an offhanded thought. Yeah.
Just see what sticks. Yeah, yeah. Well, anyway, sorry, I'm terrible at wrapping these up because I just like talking to you.
Same.
But yeah. But is there anything else you want to share with the audience before we wrap up? Like where people can find you online?
Yeah, you can find me pretty much all the major social media outlets at JMS Comedy. I have a podcast called Ignorance is Blessed where I just share my thoughts. I sometimes interview people about their expertise in their life or, random parts of their identity. And then
I love that name, by the way. That's such a clever name.
Thank you. I had to get I spent a lot of episodes over explaining it like, hey, I know that's the whole point of it. And then I just was like, oh, fuck it.
No, it's so good. It's so no, and I like anyway, I almost called this podcast This Arthritis Life, kind of after like This American Life. But then
I love that.
But I don't know if you like This American Life, it's a great podcast, but it's like no, it's like a super high production value. Like I was like, I don't want it to set expectations that's gonna be like,
they're like it's just me. Like it's that's so funny. Well, I love that you do this because it's great just remember, especially when I first got diagnosed, like looking for anything of like people who can relate. So I love that you do this. And then I will say, in the event that there's any crossover listeners of people who are into smutty fantasy novels like A Court of Thorns and Roses.
Yeah. I read those.
I also have another podcast that I co-host with my friend Nicole Amy Schreiber, who's also a really funny comedian called Two Filthy Nerds. And on Friday, I don't know when this is coming out, but Friday the 13th, we are dropping the first 2 episodes where we're going through the entire series.
Wait, what's her name?
Nicole Amy Schreiber.
Oh, Amy Schreiber. Okay, Nicole Amy Schreiber. Okay.
Yeah, Aimee.
Oh yeah. Okay. Oh, I recognize it. Okay. I was looking her up as you're talking.
You remind me of her. You guys both have aged fabulously.
Oh, okay. Oh, thank you. Jeez.
She also is just like around your age and is like, don't go in the sun. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't have a time machine to tell myself that. It's too late for this skin.
Well, growing up in Alaska, like probably helped. Like there's like no, right? Is there sun? I don't know. Maybe not.
So I soaked it all up.
People in Seattle always get sunburned in the winter, actually, because they go skiing and they don't realize that like you can still get
the reflection.
Yeah.
Yep.
But back to that. No, they're actually I'm rescheduling right now with a woman who lives with a bunch of different health conditions, but Chloe Lisi, she wrote I wouldn't call it like I don't know if you want to call it smut or not, but it's a really good it's a adult romance featuring people with rheumatoid, or one person has rheumatoid arthritis in the story. I think you would like it. It's a whole series called the oh my God. Okay. Not only is it only
the Wilmot sisters.
No,
I'm just Googling.
No, the other one, the Bergman brothers.
Books.
Always Only You, Bergman brothers. She was actually going to be on the podcast, and then I wanted to read some excerpts on it, and then it was like she wasn't sure. I had to talk to the publisher, and then we have to like figure it out. But anyway, so I didn't know that I would like that genre, because I think it was totally like an internalized misogyny of like, oh, romance novels are just stupid or whatever. And then I read it.
Yeah, same. I was like,
yeah.
I had friends tell me about it for like months before I was like, fine, I'll read this thing. And then it's been an uphill battle to not make it my entire personality, to be honest.
Oh,
so the podcast will be an outlet
welcome
for
it.
me.
I am so gonna listen. I'm literally gonna be your first subscriber. Maybe.
Yay! Two Filthy Nerds. That's what that's called. And so
love it.
Come on over.
Oh, and it's the book talk is a thing, like book TikTok. Like people love talking about books, and it's been really fun participating in that.
Oh yeah, I've gotten real sucked into that.
Oh, okay. You're like, again, one of our special interests is like,
yes,
like hyperfixation, and you're like,
yeah, and that's and that's of course like my whole explore page right now. It just goes through phases, and now it's all bookstagram book talk.
Mine's like all like Paralympics and Taylor Swift. I got really into the Paralympics and like different couples and like people getting engaged, and I was just like,
oh my God, I love it.
Anyway, all right. Well, I will let you go. We went way over. I'm so glad you were able to go.
Well, thank you for having me. This was awesome. I really appreciate it. And I just love that you're doing this. So thank you for putting this out there.
You too. No, I mean, all of your work is awesome. Even the stuff that on about arthritis. Okay. So I'm not being biased about arthritis. Yeah. I hope you continue recovering from your hot dog, your assault.
Yes. That will be the rest of my day.
Okay. Well, thanks again. We'll talk to you later.
All right. Bye.